Oratorian Mission in Sri Lanka. Global Christian history, Goan Oratorians are considered the only Asian missionary order that carried out activities in another Asian country, that is, Sri Lanka. The Oratorian Mission in Sri Lanka was pioneered by Joseph Vaz in 1687, and the mission concluded with the death of Mates Caetano in 1874. Their missionary activities in Sri Lanka lasted over 150 years. During this period, they played a crucial role in the restoration and sustenance of a territorial network of Catholic churches in Sri Lanka. Similar to other forms of ritualistic art, like liturgical drama and hymns that were pioneered by the Goan Oratorians, places of worship originated by them in Sri Lanka form a unique corpus of global significance. There is no other known, coherent architectural typology of Oratorian religious constructions anywhere else in the world. The hands-on architectural solutions tested by the Oratorians in Sri Lanka triggered a rejuvenation that gave rise to a distinctive architectural style that began to penetrate Sri Lanka's northern hinterland. Churches of a single nave. The model of a single rectangular nave is the simplest and most primitive form of the Oratorian spatial program in Sri Lanka. The only existing example of this model is the Church of Our Lady of Good Voyage in Amitakali, Batticaloa. The nave walls have been totally demolished in the recent past. However, the remaining three-door facade is fairly preserved. Churches of a single nave with narrow chancel. This model consists of a rectangular nave with a single door facade, a triumphal arch, and a narrow chancel with a roof at the same height as the nave. Therefore, the spatial layout is like the previous Portuguese period model, but without the internal columns. The best example of this typology is the Church of St. Andrews in Tottaveli, an old Portuguese mission station. Churches of three-nave with narrow chancel. This model consists of a three-door facade corresponding to the three naves, a triumphal arch, and a narrow chancel with a roof the same height as the nave. The finest example of this kind is the Church of St. Bartholomew in Oleituduvai, Mana, one of the oldest and most crucial missionary stations from the Portuguese period. It is currently famous as Kathar Kovil. Churches of three-nave without chancel. The most exciting factor distinctive to this model is the absence of the chancel. Instead, the structure persists only of a broader three-nave and a corresponding three-door facade. This model is best represented in the Church of St. Mary's in Mana. However, the present chancel and two side towers at either side of the facade are a later addition. Nevertheless, the church was demolished some years ago to be replaced by a modern one. Monastery churches. The complete example of the monastery church model of the Oratorian spatial program is the Church of Our Lady of Assumption, Parappan Kandal, the one-time headquarters of the Oratorian congregation. In addition, this model consists of two additional lateral chapels on either side of the chancel, accessed by the two symmetrical arches placed on side walls of the chancel. Cultural assimilation and interior elements. In the oratorial spatial program, their social conventions and religious sensibilities have often endorsed the way church interiors were ornamented. Thus, architectural details such as interior wooden columns, masonry altars, and decorative retables have been influenced by the vernacular details in northern Sri Lanka and the Malabar in India. Wooden columns. The specific type of wooden columns that are used to widen the church's internal space has become one of the distinguishing traits of Oratorian architecture in Sri Lanka. Especially in the churches of the northern region, architectural richness is centered around the column details. These are usually surmounted by mortised capitals with four-sided decorative brackets found in ancient Hindu buildings. Masonry altars. The decorative masonry altars placed at the chancel are considered one of the interior elements that testify to the Portuguese impact on the Oratorian building program in Sri Lanka. The masonry altars constitute numerous landings and stories. In some specimens, the top story has niches framed by round arches to place three-dimensional images. Decorative retables. Decorative retables can be considered the most exciting interior element of the art and architecture of the Oratorian mission in Sri Lanka. They mainly reflect a Portuguese matrix's aesthetic characteristics, which were first carried to Goa and then to Sri Lanka during the 16th and 17th centuries by Portuguese Padroado missionaries. Life-size Pascu images. The most widespread Oratorian period para-liturgy was the Passion Plays, or Pascu or Pascoa in Portuguese, performed annually during the Lenten period. The Portuguese missionaries first established this tradition, which was later continued by the Oratorians as an effective strategy in their pastoral ministry. These plays took more of the nature of folk drama. In Pascu performances, life-size puppets or images were used to represent the significant events related to the passion, death, and resurrection of Christ. The puppets were carved and constructed skillfully in such a way as to move their limbs and manipulate their movements as the operator intended. These statues were either brought from Goa or sculpted in Sri Lanka by the best local artists. Sacred images. Apart from the Portuguese missionary initiation of importing European and Goanese images to Sri Lanka since their arrival, the Oratorians also provided an essential conduit for sacred art after they founded the new mission on the island. Like the practice in Portuguese India, the Oratorians have placed religious icons in the vanguard of their mission of conversion and indoctrination. These iconographical items were either directly brought from Goa or produced locally by the best community artisans. Religious paintings. The most unexposed case of an Oratorian tradition of sacred art is religious paintings. It is implicit that these paintings were to be an effective means of ecclesial contextualization of the local community and a practical way of communicating across linguistic barriers. Wayside crosses. Following the Portuguese missionary tradition, Oratorians also erected large crosses in front of the churches and at wayside shrines in every village to indicate the church's presence nearby. In addition, the image of the miraculous cross at the Church of the Holy Cross of Miracle, the convent church of the Congregation of Oratory in Monte da Boa Vista, Goa, became the most familiar symbol of Oratorians in Sri Lanka. Its replica was usually placed at every church and wayside shrine by the Oratorians to symbolize a place of devotion. Remnants of the past. Regrettably, many churches of this unique tradition have been damaged due to the 30-year armed conflict that embroiled the region. Those churches that did not suffer damage were either temporarily uninhabited or dilapidated due to the lack of maintenance, given the community's deprived financial situation. Post-war reconstructions. The distinctive ritualistic and architectural tradition established over 3 centuries by the Oratorians, with various intercultural influences, have been swept away in the recent past due to the respective communities' engagement in post-war constructions. Most churches are abandoned or completely demolished in favor of new, modern church constructions.